Juniper makes even more AI. AWS and Oracle are partnering up. The feds say that BGP needs a fix. Broadcom found the bottom of the non-AI chip market. Airvine goes through walls now, and we take a closer look at that little tiff between AT&T and VMware in this episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, September 11th edition of the Gestalt IT Rundown. In case you didn't know, today is Patriot Day as well as National Day of Service and Remembrance. And we are here to bring you some of the news stories in the tech space. But I'd like to introduce my co-host, which is a person who hosts his own webcast on the Futurum Group, the 5G Factor, and someone that I've guested with several times, Mr. Ron Westfall. Ron, welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown.
Thank you, Tom. I'm certainly looking forward to my debut, and I certainly love the rapport we have in the 5G Factor. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Outstanding. Well, since this is your first time on the rundown, I'm going to let you go ahead and kick off with that first story.
Well, thanks, Tom. All right. Well, we see Juniper has announced some new enhancements to its data center networking platforms, and it's all about, you guessed it, AI. Now, some of these new features include service level awareness for AI ops, as well as impact analysis, which builds on the service awareness to help resolve, trouble tickets faster and quite simply speed up network recovery. Now, this is all thanks in part to the massive investments that Juniper has made in AI with Marvis and other technologies for years. Now, with the acquisition of HPE around the corner, Tom, what does this new release have in store for Juniper customers?
Well, I think it's taking what we're hearing about in the AI market and it's really making it make a lot more sense to like the tactical operation side of things. Because listen, I know that we get a lot of big picture stuff, and we heard a lot about that in the keynote that a certain fruit and mobile company had on Monday. But what does that really mean when you get into it? Well, one of the things that Marvis has always been so great about is giving me quick answers to the kinds of questions that are difficult to answer quickly. I can tell you exactly when a route flapped in a network. I can't tell you that that made the network slow without specialized knowledge to know that the flapping process caused that to happen. So here's what this enhancement does is it takes what Marvis has built, which historically has been very focused on wireless and on campus networking, and it drags that into the data center. And with the AI native now networking, which is the tagline that Juniper has been using for quite a while, there's a real opportunity here to kind of bring that focus into the data center. And that is hugely important for post-acquisition Juniper and HPE. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, but why is that important? Because I expect that Juniper is really going to be the core data center networking component of the new HPE networking division. I think that we're going to see a lot of that expertise, especially from Apstra, being integrated up and down the stack there and being able to pull in some of the server components to create this holistic Green Lake type experience, but for people who are running hybrid or even private on-prem clouds. But in order to make that happen, you have to integrate AI into the stack. And that, I think, is where we're going to see a lot of focus in the future. And what better way to sell more devices than to say that we have a lot of AI software that's going to run on them. So I'm excited to see where Juniper takes this, and I'm excited to see how this integrates post-acquisition, which of course nobody can talk about yet because it's not finalized, but just know that that's in the planning stages. Oracle and AWS announced today that they are going to be launching Oracle Database at AWS, which is a new offering that allows customers to access Oracle Autonomous Database on dedicated infrastructure and Oracle Exadata database services within AWS. Now, I know that Oracle has always been a champion of the fact that the best way to run Oracle is on Oracle Cloud, but this shift to AWS has interesting implications for the multi-cloud ecosystem. Ron, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm here at Oracle Cloud World. So yes, this is a very impactful announcement. And what I think is a key takeaway is that, first of all, it will be available in preview later this year with broader availability in 2025 as it expands to new regions and, to meet the needs of customers. So the announcement in itself is impactful because I think it's actually giving Oracle more multi-cloud credibility. I think that, first of all, Oracle has been the most proactive amongst the major cloud providers in addressing customer demand for multi-cloud flexibility. And they already have a relationship with Microsoft Azure and as well as Google Cloud. And following up with AWS was highly anticipated and a most welcomed move. Also, what I think is important is that the move has actually, I think, helped Oracle's, well, financial quarter. Already, Oracle beat Wall Street expectations because the AWS announcement also coincided with their new quarterly announcement. And what we saw is that the first quarter fiscal revenue was $13.3 billion, and that's up 7% with profits of $2.9 billion. And I think what's a key takeaway is that cloud services revenues rose 21% to $5.6 billion. And I think what is important is that Oracle not only had an overall solid quarter, but it beat on both the top and the bottom line. And I think one clear takeaway is that OCI, as you mentioned, Tom, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, that is the cloud infrastructure unit, it grew 45% in the quarter. So that is pretty phenomenal by any measure. And I believe it's Oracle that's really leading in terms of growth counts right now in, say, the IaaS market segment. Plus, on the SaaS side, when it comes to cloud applications, we also saw double-digit growth, 10%. So really, the OCI number is pretty remarkable. And as a result, I think it's benefiting Oracle that they're splitting out the Oracle Cloud numbers. And clearly, Wall Street is responding to this. Also, in the announcement, Ellison credited the increasing growth in Oracle's database business to its Microsoft and Google agreements, and has simply described the new AWS partnership as a milestone in the multi-cloud era. I can't argue with that. I think this is, again, is showing the momentum. But what is it about the announcement that's important to customers? Well, first of all, it will deliver a unified cloud experience as Oracle Database at AWS enables customers to manage their Oracle databases within the AWS ecosystem using the AWS Management Console, while also benefiting from Oracle's automated database services. Plus, the service provides a connection between Oracle databases and AWS applications, and that can assure performance and scalability for mission-critical workloads such as our friend AI. Also, customers can easily integrate Oracle databases with AWS services such as Amazon EC2, AWS Analytics, as well as AI ML services such as Amazon Bedrock. And that is to gain real-time insights and analytics. Also, the service offers a unified support from both Oracle and AWS, and that includes streamlined billing through the AWS Marketplace. And that allows customers to use their existing Oracle licenses as well as AWS commitments. So it's really making it easy for the customers to use this. And I think that will help gain traction as the offer becomes available in 2025. Let's look at what's going on the security side of things, as we're seeing that the White House is keen on making BGP security, well, a top priority. And what we're seeing is that the U.S. federal government released a statement about how the lack of security with BGP could potentially interfere with critical communication traffic. The protocol is famously insecure, with no inherent mechanism to validate source authority. And so that is important because this has led to some pretty famous blunders, such as Pakistan hijacking the entire internet in 2008, or the numerous times China has redirected traffic through the servers due to misconfigurations. So now the White House is putting its foot down and appears to be backing stronger protections suggested by the Department of Justice and the FCC over the past couple of years. Tom, why is the White House getting this involved?
Because the White House knows two things. One, if we cannot secure our BGP infrastructure, we are essentially leaving the internet wide open to whomever wants to do things with it. And all you have to do is look back a couple of years. Russia used some problems in BGP to basically isolate Ukraine from the internet during the middle of that big thing that happened early in the year. You know, they just rolled in and ate all the chips and stuff, you know, that kind of party. But more importantly, so many things require the internet today. Like imagine being able to, the old days, like you get a paper schedule for something, or you'd get an actual paycheck. All of that stuff has moved online now. And without that kind of infrastructure support, what we're going to see is any major disruption in that, whether it's something on the level of what we experienced with CrowdStrike, or something even as minor as, you know, a BGP misconfiguration or a transient status update causing some issues, that can cause huge ripple effects in the economy. And we alluded to, you know, the infamous 2008 Pakistan YouTube block problem gone wrong. Kids, that was 16 years ago. Do you think that the internet today is more critical than it was 16 years ago? I'll give you a hint. That was when the iPhone 3 came out. Yeah, that long ago. So look at the way that everything works today, and then look at everything else that's going on in the industry, and the White House has to get involved. But here's the other reason. Remember when they found out that the Minutemen missile silos had absolutely no controls over the launch other than the fact that you just had to turn the two keys at the same time? So what did they do? Well, they were told that they had to mandate to put a code in place. And infamously, it was 8 zeros. Like, that's the level of minimum security that we're dealing with. I think that the White House is trying to drive the lead on this so that we don't implement some half-baked policy that doesn't necessarily meet the goals of what we need to do. So by having leadership and by making sure that everybody knows that this is how it has to be, we can get to a better place very quickly, because we've seen this already fail with things like DNSSEC, with the efforts to combat spam by using, you know, authoritative SMTP. Those never really took off because businesses weren't motivated to introduce security controls that kind of forced them to do things a little bit better, but at the cost of efficiency. But there's one group that's less efficient than all of that, and that is the US federal government, because they have the power to say, this is a rule now, and if you don't follow it, you don't get to play nicely. So I'm kind of excited. Is it funny to say that I'm excited to see the behemoth of the federal government get involved? Oh, yeah, a little bit, but at least I know they can't be ignored. Broadcom posted their Q3 revenue numbers, and it was pretty impressive. They earned $13 billion. That was buoyed by their semiconductor division, which raised $7.25 billion. However, when you dig into the numbers, you find something a little bit interesting. The AI-related chipset business accounted for $3.1 billion of that whole number. But in the statement that was given during the earnings call, Hock Tan said that they think they have found the bottom of the non-AI chip market. Now, I'm sure what he meant when he said that was that he expected an increase in that area with more AI-driven chips causing the non-AI chips to kind of increase in demand as more people are consuming them and building services around them. But I'm also wondering if he wasn't trying to send a signal to the investors that the numbers should bounce back up and the numbers should go up. He did send a message, though, because the stock price dipped in after-hours trading, as most of them do when the earnings are announced. Ron, is there cause for concern if Broadcom is saying that the chipset market for non-AI chips has kind of hit rock bottom?
Well, I don't think there is capital C concern. I think the results, as you noted, are pretty impressive. I think a compelling argument could be made that after NVIDIA, Broadcom has been the best performing semiconductor stock, or at least semiconductor related stock. And I would like to dive into the fact that the results also reflect more than just the chip aspects. And I'll get back to the chip aspects. As we saw that Hock Tan noted that the Q3 results also reflected continued strength in the company's AI semiconductor solutions alongside VMware. Now, as such, Broadcom expects revenue from AI to be $12 billion for fiscal year 24, driven by Ethernet networking and custom accelerators for AI data centers. This is shining the spotlight on Ethernet. This is going to be integral to what we're doing in terms of being able to scale AI training workloads and data centers, let alone AI inferencing in any part of the network. And it's a clear indicator that the work of organizations such as the Ultra Ethernet Consortium are going to make a difference in terms of how can we make AI successful on an ecosystem-wide basis. Now, the transformation of VMware is continuing, and I believe it's progressing well overall. And as a result, the integration is helping to drive EBITDA margin of 64% of revenue as the company is now finishing up fiscal year 24. Now, the Q3 results show that Broadcom is also making progress, I believe, in positioning itself as a comprehensive tech leader. It's no longer just it's a semiconductor company. VMware obviously brings that to the forefront, but it's also spanning mainframe software as well as semiconductor diversification that impacts security, which we already touched on. And this is highlighting how Broadcom is looking to pivot from being primarily that semiconductor business to one that is building on previous moves, already touched on VMware, but also CA and Symantec. So clearly, I think Broadcom is being effective in terms of diversifying its portfolio and having success. Now, drilling down, Broadcom posted an EBITDA margin of not 63%, which topped expectations of 61%. And it's highlighting, I believe, strong operational efficiency, something that Hawktan is well known for. And also, I believe when we talked about VMware, that acquisition helped contribute $2.7 billion to revenue. So it's already having an immediate impact in how Broadcom is performing in terms of fiscal results. Also of note, 44% year-over-year growth in networking revenue, and that totaled $3.8 billion. And that, again, was driven heavily by AI networking as well as custom acceleration. Plus, the semiconductor solutions itself brought in $7.3 billion in revenue for the quarter, while infrastructure software reported $5.8 billion. So again, diversity is just proving to be an asset for Broadcom. Now, customer concentration relationships with customers like Apple continue to be a driver for sustained growth. So it's good to have a high-profile customer such as Apple as part of your customer base. Also, what's also important is that Broadcom, I believe, has been very effective at supply chain management. And I think this is reflected in the ongoing relationship they have with TSMC. As we know, managing complex supply chain is really essential to meeting market demands as well as producing positive financial results. Now, I think it's also important to note that Broadcom did report a GAAP net loss of $1.9 billion due to a one-time discrete non-cash tax provision of $4.5 billion, part of a SWOT perspective here. Lots of strengths came out of the announcement, but we also have to note that that was part of it. Also, speaking of non-GAAP, net income was solid at $6.1 billion, and this is showing, again, operational profitability, and free cash stood at $4.8 billion. Now, looking ahead, Broadcom provided fourth quarter revenue guidance of approximately $14 billion. The adjusted EBITDA margin is expected to remain strong at around 64%. And this is an optimistic outlook as it's largely driven by anticipated growth in AI revenue, which is expected to exceed $11 billion for the fiscal year. Also, the company predicts a modest recovery, and this is really wrapping it up, for non-AI semiconductor revenue in the second half of the fiscal year. So it's basically good news across the board, and hopefully macroeconomic conditions will cooperate in that regard. And with that in mind, let's now look at something that is not a Broadcom specific item, but the fact that we have a friend, Tech Field Day presenter Airvine has debuted a new technology designed for getting around concrete walls, or more appropriately, to go through them, which I think could be a key differentiator. WaveCore is the name of the new product, which is developed as an outgrowth of their existing Wave Tunnel solution. Dave Sumi of Airvine said that while Wave tunnel was successful with interior walls, there was a need to go through some very thick exterior walls as well. And WaveCore functions as a point-to-point Ethernet bridge capable of speeds of up to 3 gigabits through a wall 18 inches thick, using a 6 gigahertz radio to do the heavy lifting. And speaking of heavy lifting, Tom, what do you think? Is this something that's going to have traction? Is it a real deal?
I think it is. We got to see Airvine. It was almost 4 years ago when they presented during Networking Field Day. And the idea is actually pretty sound, if you will. They do a lot of work in universities where you can't really like mar the structures very much. Like, if you have like a building on the Harvard campus that is, like, I don't know, like 150 years old, you can't drill holes in the wall to put stuff up. And so the original idea behind Wave Tunnel was pretty easy. You put one box on the wall, you shoot a wireless across the wall to connect another pod, and that way it all works. And originally, the wave tunnel worked really well, provided it was open air or glass. And during that Networking Field Day presentation, a couple of our delegates actually gave them that feedback of, I don't always get to work with friendly walls, if you want to call it that. Think about most university buildings that have been built over the last 50 years. There was that period from pretty much between like 1945 to maybe about 1975 where they were all built with massive amounts of concrete, whether that was from a cheap construction perspective or they were trying to enhance the security. I know there's a building down here on the University of Oklahoma campus that is literally built to be riot proof, and the concrete walls are a foot thick inside the building. That does not bode well for anybody who's trying to get a wireless signal through there. So what had happened is that Airvine went back to the drawing board and they said, we need to make this a reality. So they pumped up the wattage. It was a 5 gigahertz radio in Wave Tunnel. It's now a 6 gigahertz radio, now that that is legal in the US. And they are able to penetrate 18 inches into a concrete wall to be able to pass that signal between two WaveCore endpoints. That is a massive advantage, because if you want to be able to beam that technology out of the building, say you want to be able to go across a courtyard or something, now you can do that without having to drill through the wall. I don't know about you, but I don't have a whole lot of 18-inch drill bits in my toolkit. So I think that this is something that's interesting. Of course, we're going to have to see how it plays well under certain loads. 3 gigabits per second throughput is really good for a wireless technology. It's okay for Ethernet technology because, typically your backbone technologies are running in multiple gigabits per second, all the way up to 10 or more. So I can see this maybe as a solution for like maybe a historical building or maybe an outbuilding that needs some connectivity, but we can't trench fiber out to it for one reason or another. So I'm excited to see where Airvine is going to be taking this. I really hope that this is something that the universities pick up on. And it's not just limited to them either. Hospitals can take this because of some of the interesting scenarios that they have with things like, MRI rooms. I can even see this going into places like in situations that we have here in America, where some of our school buildings are being built to be safe rooms from severe weather, and those walls are pretty thick. So if we need to get signal in there to be able to do like, weather updates and stuff like that, that's a great way to do it. So kudos to Airvine for solving that whole concrete problem. I hope this pans out for you. Now, we had another story we wanted to take a closer look at. It was kind of an interesting one because, both sides of this are kind of in an interesting quandary. AT&T's finally decided that enough is enough, and they've gone out and they filed a lawsuit over some of the tactics they claim are putting first responders and critical government services at risk. Now, what might be at issue here? Well, AT&T is claiming that there is a breach of contract because of the new support policy enabled by VMware by Broadcom after that whole acquisition happened. Now, here's where the sticking point comes up. So there is apparently an amendment in the contract between AT&T and VMware that says that AT&T can renew their current support agreement for up to 2 years, provided that they do that before the expiration of their current support agreement. Typical contractees, right? I want you to pay me before I have to hound you to pay me in the future. The problem is that now VMware by Broadcom is not honoring that clause in the contract because they want to make sure that AT&T, big juggernaut that it is, gets onto their new yearly support contract service offerings. Now, this is the part I thought was kind of funny. AT&T stated they don't have a problem with the shifting way that VMware by Broadcom has started doing their contract stuff. They're totally fine with that. They're just mad that it's affecting them right now, and they can't exercise their super secret special AT&T clause to get it cheaper for the next 2 years. So Ron, this is a big one, right? Because like this could basically say, is the model that VMware by Broadcom following, that they are basically trying to invalidate all the existing support contracts to get revenue to pump those numbers that we talked about earlier in the story? Is that something that's legally defensible? And on the flip side of that, AT&T is, they've got a very small leg to stand on here, because we all know that cell phone companies are notorious for honoring their contract pricing forever, right?
Yes, the irony is so thick you could choke on it. And I believe, speaking of field day, no matter how this plays out, it will be a field day for the lawyers. And I think that's something that we can all anticipate with confidence. And what I think is interesting, I'll drill down a bit on a couple of aspects that has led up to it, and I think that is impacting, the showdown. One is if AT&T has success with this particular suit, it'll be interesting to see if it'll trigger, other companies who are, exactly dancing on the ceiling in terms of their ongoing VMware relationship. I don't think that is a big secret. There's, some companies that are, actively looking for VMware alternatives. However, that's competition. And hold on, what can Broadcom do that will entice folks to say, all right, VMware is integral to our overall future plans? And to go back, when Broadcom acquired VMware, Hock Tan made it clear that he believes that VMware has, outstanding technology. However, it was just that the organization tended to be fragmented in terms of how solutions were sold and supported. And clients actually found working with VMware could be complicated as a result. And so what we've seen is that Broadcom has embarked on a strategy which can be called radical simplification, which is basically reducing the number of SKUs by significant numbers, and also quite simply providing VMware offerings through an integrated stack that has common releases and a comprehensive life cycle management. Now, users are mixed about how this approach is playing out. Some are, as AT&T is clearly demonstrating, are concerned about the perceived increase in costs that can come with this transition, as well as, fear of the unknown. However, I believe ultimately that customers, partners, as well as the workforce engaged with Broadcom VMware, or VMware by Broadcom, can expect clear goals and directions that will be implemented by Broadcom. And what I think is also interesting here is that AT&T, to be specific, that they, when it comes to the new software that Broadcom is offering, or VMware, is that it's the VMware Cloud Foundation solution. And that is really the new integrated VMware solution that combines compute, storage, and network virtualization products, plus, management tools. And this is related to the fact that Broadcom has stopped selling individual VMware products and now sells only bundles that are part of this subscription service push, as well as, software products and support that are related to it. And to your point, Tom, yes, legal filings can be dense and intricate, but AT&T is having, some, I guess you can say, PR gain potentially, and that the fact that they're saying that Broadcom is attempting to bully them and playing a king's ransom for subscriptions that AT&T does not want or need, at least over the next 2 years. And as such, they refuse to be extorted. Yes, AT&T, can we say, are they incurably innocent in how they treat some of their, mobile subscribers? Well, that is something that is a matter of opinion. However, what I think is important here is that when it comes to the national security issue, I don't think it's going to come to the point where, okay, AT&T has to pull the plugs and therefore, VMware by Broadcom is really, the guilty party. But I think it's important to note that there are 8,600 servers that are hosted by AT&T and that use 75,000 VMs. And these are all dedicated just to public safety, as well as the Office of the President, which we talked about later. Now, AT&T is claiming without Broadcom's support, as it is expecting it, with this, clause that says, oh, they can get 2 more years as is, this can result in widespread network outages. I think they're going a bit too far with that aspect. But otherwise, it'll be interesting to see, how this plays out. And I am looking forward to seeing, the resolution.
Yeah, so listen, you know my feelings on the way the whole VMware by Broadcom licensing thing has happened. I mean, they said they were going to do it and they did it. And the problem with unilaterally doing it is that, unlike a cell phone provider, companies have legal departments, and they are not afraid to have legal people read the terms of that contract with a fine-tooth comb and find a way to have a negotiation point. And that's the key here. This lawsuit's never going to go to court, because this is a filing designed to make VMware by Broadcom come to the negotiating table. Look at the press releases from AT&T. They talked about the fact that they're bullying, that Broadcom is bullying them. They referenced 911 services, and they referenced critical government infrastructure. AT&T, do me a favor. Don't talk about knocking out 911 services when you yourself are guilty of doing it recently. Not a good look. But here's the thing. They're trying to litigate part of this in the court of public opinion, because they know that there is this massive outcry about the way that VMware by Broadcom just unilaterally decided to change all of the contracts, and you have no option but to move on them. And yeah, we all know what that feels like, don't we, AT&T, when a giant corporate overlord tells you that things must be like this now because there's no other option to do anything else, and you're pretty much stuck. Yeah, man. That sucks. My heart goes right back into my chest, because you're getting exactly what you deserve. And the fact that you were tone deaf enough in the statement to say that you don't disagree with the business model, you just disagree with the fact that it affects you for the first time ever. So here's what you really need to do. You need to take those high-priced lawyers that spent all those weeks reading that contract, trying to find it out, and you need to get them working on a negotiation. Here's where I think this is probably going to fall out. You get 1 more year of your current support contracts, with the provision that you begin to make changes to move to that new model. Sure, VMware is going to take a little bit of a hit now, but then they know that there is a horizon in sight, and they are going to get their money from AT&T, because, like you said, 8,000 servers, 75,000 VMs, that's what, a little more than 9 to 1. You're not going to Proxmox overnight. You're not going to be ripping and replacing for Nutanix. And the 1 year is critical, because if you give them 2, they are going to figure out how to move off of that. They're going to move mountains to try to do whatever it takes, even if it's just some of the ancillary infrastructure. They'll keep the core infrastructure on VMware as long as possible, because the 911 and government services, because, man, that's a hell of a negotiating tactic. But I think ultimately what will happen is AT&T is using this to buy time to be able to get off of it. And Broadcom, if you want to keep this, you need to negotiate hard. Not as hard as you're negotiating right now, where you're like, there's no other option. We only sell this thing now. Because the only reason you're in this mess is because you already wrote a special clause into that contract allowing them this out, because you wanted AT&T's money up front, and you wanted AT&T's nameplate on your customer list, your NASCAR slide. So this is kind of like, what happens when you see the 2 schoolyard bullies getting into an argument about who's going to be the bigger bully. And we're all just sitting over there eating popcorn going, man, this is really entertaining because they're not picking on me for once. I don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, I don't think this is going to go to trial. I think there's going to be a quiet settlement. We're going to not really hear much about the details, because nobody wants to walk out of this embarrassed. I think VMware is going to get little money now, but more money in the future. I think AT&T is going to call this a small win, and then immediately start trying to find ways to get off of their product lines that they have through Broadcom, VMware by Broadcom. I don't think they're going to ultimately be successful, because that's a lot of technical debt to unwind in 12 or 6 or 18 months. But, I think we'll probably see something about this story again soon. Speaking of things that you will see again soon, we have some great stuff coming up with Field Day. In fact, this week, we are going to be having some great Field Day sessions. AI Field Day 5 is happening. It's Steven's out in California. He's going to be talking to companies like Infabrica, Elastic, Integral, Cisco, Arista, Keysight, and VMware. and they're going to be having great presentations September 11th and 12th. So today and tomorrow. And then he's going to be back next week with Edge Field Day. That's going to be September 18th and 19th. If you want some details about what's going on there, head over to techfieldday.com. While you're there, set a calendar reminder for September the 24th, because we're going to be back in California. I'm going to be there. Ron's going to be there because we have an exclusive event with our friends at Nokia. We have some great presentations coming up. Some of them are going to involve data center networking, like we talked about today. Some of them might involve AI. We'll have to see what happens. But I promise you that if you tune in on September the 24th, you're going to get a great overview of what Nokia is doing. And then on October 2nd and 3rd, we're going to be talking about AI data infrastructure. And we're going to have a great presentation with some great companies, more to be revealed there. Techfieldday.com is the place that you want to go to check those out, along with all the other great events that we have coming up, focused on security, networking, mobility, and so many other things. Ron, if people want to check out some of the great things that you do for the Futurum Group, where can they go to learn more?
Sure, I appreciate it, Tom. That's 5G Factor. There's one that's coming out, I believe, on around the same time as this rundown. So I think that will be double the value, double of the fun. And so, yeah, 5G Factor is on the Futurum Group website. Please bookmark it, and also look at all the other Futurum Group content out there. There's just a wealth of insightful information, and includes, for example, Futurum Intelligence, as well as our regular issued insight reports. So please check it out.
Absolutely. And if you want more great insights and wonderful things that happen every Wednesday, make sure you tune in for the Gestalt IT Rundown. We have a variety of ways that you can check us out. You can go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com, Gestalt IT Video, to see the rundown. You can go to your favorite podcast application and look for the Gestalt IT Rundown if you just want to hear us, or if you want to check out the show notes and the articles that we link for our notes, make sure you head over to gestaltit.com and check that out. We will be back next week with another great episode. We'll have more great news stories. It's the fall, so all the fun stuff is happening. But until then, for Stephen Foskett, for myself, for Ron Westfall, and for all the great people who work hard to bring you the rundown every week, take care, stay cool. We will see you next week.